Today I'll be experimenting with some Tono and Limbs ink additives. One is called Toner, and then I'll be using 3 ink additives from their Shimmer liquid line: Gray Pearl, which is this bottle here, Super Violet, and Deep Blue. Before this, I've used distilled water to slightly desaturate an ink or to help dry out an ink just a little bit. I've also used a mild dish detergent to help make my inks a little more wet or flow better. But then Van Ness came out with their White Lightning, which I now use instead. It's an ink additive that helps make your ink more wet or flow better, and it's nice that it's in a compact bottle, but it's quite powerful. I won't cover the use of distilled water or White Lightning too much in this video, as it's covered much better in different videos, the latest being Gadget Stop 321's video, so I'll put a link to that in the comments. The toner is a clear liquid, and it has a slight glycerin feel to it, a little bit soapy. But that slip feeling is so much more concentrated in White Lightning. I used water as a comparison, which feels like it doesn't have any slip at all. I gathered up all my glass pens and eyedroppers and ink puddles to do this, but the most important for me during these tests are these water bottles. I have 3 Old Spice bottles filled with water and then an empty bottle to put my used eyedroppers in. I'm pretty much a fountain pen ink user. But if you've watched any of my other videos, you know there's a bunch of ladies over here that really enjoy just playing with ink. The ink is the purpose of the hobby, not so much the fountain pen or the dip pen. And also the glass pen may be the purpose of the ink too. So some of the desirable characteristics of the ink itself may be different for some of these ladies as opposed to a fountain pen user. This is Arctic Aurora, and as you can see on the label, the ink kind of thins out as it goes lower on the label here. The desirable qualities in this ink is not that it shades or that it chromo shades, but rather when you lay it down thick, it kind of draws up and has thinner places that look a little more pastel. And then when you add water, you get different colors from that same family of colors. So the different color is not a result of shading or pooling, but of thinning out. I've seen on some websites this being called chromatography ink. The reason I mention this is because toner is supposed to desaturate the ink and make it brighter, but it also seems to have that effect where the ink kind of draws up and leaves those little pastel parts that are desirable by many Inkanuma ladies. But it could just be a result of simple desaturation, that the surfactants are somehow lessened. You can see with half toner the separation here in the ink. First we'll start with Ferris Wheel Press Jelly Bean Blue ink. It's a dark, wet ink with a pretty heavy red sheen. I'm using it straight here so we can use it as a comparison. As a reminder, whenever you use any of these additives, make sure you do it like in a sample bottle or an ink puddle. You don't want to mess up your whole bottle of ink. Just to make things go faster, I'm using heavy doses. I'm using 1 full dropper of ink and 1 full dropper of the toner in this beaker. With the heavy applications of the glass pen and dip pen, it's a little bit lighter with half toner and half ink, but where it really shows up is when you spread the ink, it does cause the ink to draw up a little bit and you end up having the lighter patches here. Next is 1 dropper full of ink and 3 dropperfuls of toner, and it's considerably lighter, brighter, and a little bit more flatter. And then finally I have 1 dropper full of ink and 4 dropperfuls of toner, and it is very light. I'm writing here with a platinum preppy, and you can see it's very light. You can also see where the ink is spread that is very separated. Here's a writing sample with that final concoction of 1 dropper full of ink and 4 dropperfuls of toner. You can see a little bit show through from the back page, but it's now lighter, brighter, and it felt a little drier. I think basically the toner thinned out the surfactant that was inside that very wet ink. I think I put so much toner in it that it's very flat. There's no shading at all. Tag Hisoku is a light colored ink that's fairly dry. And we'll do a 1-to-1 concoction here, 1 dropper full of ink and 1 dropper full of toner. The ink lightened up and was maybe just a little bit wetter to write with, but then what you really saw was the separation of the ink when you spread it. So basically with toner, if you want to desaturate an ink and not make it wetter or drier, you could use toner. If for some reason that you're an Inkanuma person and you want to see the ink spread more, you could also use toner. When you add distilled water to an ink, depending on how much you add, it can make it drier because it does thin out the surfactant. But it looks like with toner, it really doesn't make it significantly drier unless you put huge amounts in it. This fantastical looking drip is called Super Violet, and it's not an ink, it's a shimmer liquid, and that's why I think it behaves kind of strangely in this drip. I'll drip the liquid in there and then it spreads out and then contracts back again, which makes me think that it's probably a really fine glitter in some toner-like liquid. So next we'll be using this Super Violet shimmer liquid and mixing it with Superstar Tea. It's basically a less purpley version of Yamabudo. With basically as little as 3 drops of Super Violet in 1 dropper full of Superstar Tea, I started to see a little bit of lightening and a little bit of shimmer, but it was kind of hard to show here on film. But there was definite shimmer and definite separation and lightening when I had 21 drops of Super Violet with 1 full dropper of Superstar Tea. But with that much additive, I think the pen started to have a little bit of flow problems. But remember, this is a flex pen. With 30 drops of Super Violet and 1 dropper full of Superstar Tea, I actually changed the color to a kind of pink color, and it had a definite pearlescent shimmer. This is the writing sample for my 1 dropper full of Superstar Tea and 30 drops of the Super Violet, which is about a 1 to 1.5 ratio. And there's definitely a nice glitter, and it doesn't come off. It's more of a pearlescent, and it's a really pretty color. This is Super Violet on black paper. It doesn't show up real well on regular paper. We'll take a quick ad break, and when we get back, I'll announce a winner to my loft contest and add some pearl gray and deep blue. Joseph Brown or Joe Brown Photos 52 on Instagram. Please contact me on Instagram messages or on my email on my About page. This is Ink Institute's Cat as Midnight. It's another one of those inks when you write with it, it's a flat gray. But as you add water to it, different colors come out and it kind of separates out like a chromatography. It looks a lot like that Arctic aurora. But now as a mix, I'll be using 1 dropper of Cat as Midnight and 9 drops, or approximately half of a dropper, of the gray pearl shimmer liquid. That's this stuff in water. It didn't seem to affect the flow, and then I also wanted to water it down to see how that affected its aurora kind of capabilities. And it did not disappoint. At 1 dropper of ink and 9 drops of the gray pearl, I got a slightly lighter gray ink, but I had a little bit of shimmer in it that was very pretty, and it still maintained its aurora capabilities. And also the glitter did not rub off. Next up is Shimmer Liquid Deep Blue. This is a very dark, almost black blue shimmer in this kind of greenish liquid, which I think is just that color because of the shimmer. Once you shake it up, it kind of looks like blue ink, but does not behave like ink at all on paper. Here you can see the shimmer kind of separated out of the liquid, and behaves even weirder in water. But it's the most interesting one since it's such a dark shimmer, and I'm curious if it will act like the honeybee one where it's very dark but rubs off. I'll be mixing it with Caran Chromatics Vibrant Green ink. Vibrant Green is a very bright, fairly wet ink with a hard red sheen. With a 1-to-1 ratio, it did lighten the ink and then made it separate a little bit on the smear and had a very little bit of blue shimmer that didn't really come off. But then I decided to go crazy, and then I did 3 parts of ink and 5 parts of the deep blue shimmer liquid. It significantly lightened the ink or desaturated it, and it made it so that it separated out more on the smear and gave it a beautiful dark blue shimmer. But alas, that shimmer was so heavy that it did smear off. So if you use heavy amounts of the deep blue shimmer liquid, you're going to need to spray a fixative or something over your writing to keep it from smearing. At light levels, it should be okay. So in summary, if you want to desaturate an ink and possibly make it a little drier or dry faster, or maybe not bleed as much, you want to add some distilled water. If you want to straight up just make an ink wetter, use some white lightning or some dish soap. Or if you want to desaturate an ink without making it drier, use some toner. You can also use it to make an ink just slightly wetter. It can also separate out the ink. And if you want to desaturate the ink and add just a touch of pearlescent shimmer, use one of the shimmering liquids. This is just my experience from using ink additives. I'm curious to see if you used some and what were your results. Please let me know your experiences in the comments, and especially ideas for things that we should try out to see what these ink additives do. If you got something out of this video, help me out with a like and a subscribe. Thanks.